Black twins threatened by racist bullies. Unaware they are black belt fighters. What happens when racist bullies at an elite academy pick on the wrong twins? Unaware they're highly skilled black belts. Just when you think their courage is the whole story, a shocking twist reveals the real power behind the prejudice isn't who you'd expect. Don't miss the full story. Like, subscribe, and listen now to uncover the truth and hear how Jada and Janelle fight for more than just themselves. The punch landed like a thunderclap against the lockers, metal groaning under the impact just inches from Janelle's head. She flinched, the acrid smell of stale sweat and cheap cologne filling her nostrils. Ryan Mallory, captain of the football team, golden boy of Westbridge Academy, sneered his knuckles white. His three friends fanned out, blocking the empty corridor after school. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting long, distorted shadows. "Think you're tough now, huh?" Ryan spat, his voice echoing unnaturally. "Think you can embarrass me in front of everyone?" Jada instinctively stepped half in front of her twin, her body tense, coiled like a spring. The air crackled, thick with menace. This wasn't like the whispers, the shoves in crowded hallways, the defaced locker. This was different, calculated, isolated. Ryan's eyes, usually filled with casual derision, now held a chilling, focused fury. He took another step forward, invading their space, his shadow engulfing them. "You charity cases don't belong here," he hissed, leaning in close enough for Jada to see the faint scar above his eyebrow, the tiny fleck of spittle that flew from his lips. "Nobody wants you here, especially not after that stunt at the dance." He jerked his chin towards Janelle. "Maybe a little reminder of your place is in order." One of his friends snickered, cracking his knuckles. Another shifted his weight, blocking the exit more firmly. There are no teachers, no other students, just the humming lights, the echoing silence, and the four figures closing in. Jada met Janelle's wide eyes. Fear was there, yes, but beneath it, something else flickered, a spark of defiance, hardened over weeks of relentless torment. Ryan raised his hand again, aiming not for the locker this time, but for Jada's face. Time seemed to warp, the motion simultaneously too fast and agonizingly slow. There was no appeal, no reasoning possible. The air felt tight, unbreathable. Jada saw the fist coming, saw the hate in Ryan's eyes, felt Janelle tremble slightly beside her. A single, silent understanding passed between them, forged in years of shared experience and discipline. This was it. The line had been crossed. 6 months earlier, Jada and Janelle Rivers had walked through the imposing wrought iron gates of Westbridge Academy, not with menace, but with a nervous excitement buzzing beneath their carefully composed exteriors. Leaving their familiar, vibrant, but under-resourced South Side neighborhood for the manicured lawns and hushed prestige of suburban Chicago felt like stepping onto a different planet. They'd earned their place with straight A's and scholarships that covered nearly everything, a testament to late nights, studying, and a fierce intellect nurtured by their parents. Their father, David Rivers, ran a small community karate dojo, a haven of discipline and respect wedged between a convenience store and a laundromat. He wasn't just a business owner. He was Sensei Dave, a fifth dan black belt who believed martial arts built character as much as skill. From the age of 6, Jada and Janelle had trained under his watchful eye. Karate wasn't just exercise, it was breathing, focused balance. It was learning control over their bodies, their tempers, their fear. Both girls earned their junior black belts by 15, their movements fluid, precise, and deceptively powerful. But Westbridge wasn't the dojo. Here, they wanted to be Jada and Janelle, the smart twins, the scholarship kids who maybe like science or literature, not the girls who could drop an opponent twice their size. Their karate skills were a private source of strength, a hidden layer beneath the surface of normal teenagers navigating a new, intimidating world. They packed away their GIs and belts, hoping to blend in, to simply learn and maybe make a few friends. Westbridge Academy breathed privilege. Students drove cars Jada and Janelle had only seen in magazines, discussed summer trips to Europe, and wore clothes that likely cost more than the river's monthly rent. It wasn't overtly hostile, not at first. There were polite nods, cursory smiles, but an invisible barrier seemed to exist. They were outsiders, marked by their scholarship status, and subtly but undeniably by their race. In a sea of predominantly white faces, their braided hair and brown skin stood out. Teachers were generally professional, impressed by their academic prowess, but the social landscape was a minefield navigated by unspoken rules and rigid cliques. The dominant force was the athletic crowd, orbiting around stars like Ryan Mullery. Ryan wasn't just popular, he was Westbridge royalty. His family were major donors, his future seemingly paved with gold leading straight to a Division I football scholarship. He moved through the halls with an aura of untouchable entitlement, his clique trailing like pilot fish. The twins found solace in the library, in the challenging coursework, and in their shared glances across classrooms that said, "We can do this." They missed the easy camaraderie of their old school, the shared cultural shorthand, the feeling of belonging. Here, they were constantly translating, observing, trying not to make a misstep. Their father's words echoed frequently. Strength isn't just physical. It's patience. It's resilience. It's knowing when not to fight. They focused on their studies, joined the debate club, Jada, and the science Olympiad team, Janelle, determined to prove they belonged through merit. Yet, an undercurrent of tension remained. Small slights, overheard whispers about affirmative action, the way certain students seemed to look through them. It wasn't universal, but it was persistent, a low hum of prejudice beneath the polished surface of Westbridge Academy. They clung to each other, their twin bond a silent shield against the subtle chill of the place, hoping their academic achievements would eventually bridge the gap, unaware the simmering tension was about to boil over, targeted directly at them. The first direct hit came barely a week into the semester. Jada, navigating the crowded main hallway between classes, felt a sharp shove from behind. Her stack of textbooks tumbled, scattering across the gleaming linoleum floor. Laughter erupted nearby. She looked up to see Ryan Mullery smirking down at her, his blue eyes cold. "Watch it, scholarship," he drawled, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Wouldn't want you scuffing the floors Daddy paid for." He didn't offer to help, just stepped deliberately over her fallen calculus book, his friends snickering as they followed. Humiliation burned Jada's cheeks. Students hurried past, eyes averted. No one met her gaze, no one spoke up. Janelle appeared moments later, helping her gather the books, her jaw tight. "Just ignore him, Jada," Janelle muttered, though her eyes flashed with anger. "He's not worth it." Ignoring him proved impossible. It was the beginning of a campaign, subtle at first, then increasingly bold. A slur scrawled in erasable marker on Jada's locker one day, gone by the next janitorial sweep, but the image seared into her mind. Janelle finding her gym bag mysteriously misplaced before practice, turning up later in the lost, and found with her water bottle emptied onto her clothes. Whispers that seemed to follow them, quota kids, ghetto, affirmative action. Ryan was usually nearby, never directly caught, but always smirking from the periphery, his presence amplifying the hostility. In chemistry class, A paper airplane landed on their shared lab table. Jada unfolded it. "Go back where you came from," it read in crude block letters. She glanced up. Ryan, 2 tables over, caught her eye and gave a mock salute. The teacher, preoccupied with a demonstration, noticed nothing. The twins felt increasingly isolated. They tried reporting the locker incident anonymously, but without proof or witnesses willing to speak, the administration offered sympathetic platitudes about adjusting to a new environment and misunderstandings. Their initial goal, to simply fit in and excel academically, felt naive now. The environment wasn't just indifferent. It was becoming actively hostile, spearheaded by Ryan and tacitly enabled by the silence of others. Their reaction was a mixture of simmering anger, frustration, and a growing sense of unease. Jada, typically the calmer one, found herself clenching her fists under desks, her focus in class fractured by darting glances and strained listening for the next insult. Janelle grew quieter, her usual bright energy dimmed, her shoulders tense. They talked late into the night in their shared bedroom, analyzing every slight, debating strategies. "Maybe we should tell Dad," Janelle suggested one evening, tracing patterns on her comforter. Jada shook her head. "What would he do? Come up here? Make a scene? That would just make it worse, Janelle. They'd use it against us. See? They don't handle things themselves." Besides, admitting the depth of the bullying felt like admitting defeat, like they couldn't handle the prestigious opportunity they'd worked so hard for. Their father had taught them self-reliance. So, they decided to endure, to document mentally, to focus harder on their schoolwork, hoping Ryan would eventually get bored or find another target. Their new, unspoken goal became, survive the year, don't give them the satisfaction of reacting, don't lose the scholarship. They retreated further into themselves and their studies, building a wall of forced indifference, unaware that Ryan's malice was only escalating. The bullying intensified, morphing from cowardly whispers to more overt acts of aggression. Ryan seemed emboldened by the twins' lack of reaction and the administration's inertia. One afternoon, leaving the library, Janelle felt something cold and wet hit the back of her head. She spun around to see Ryan and his friends laughing, an empty soda cup rolling near Ryan's feet. "Oops," Ryan said with exaggerated innocence. Butterfingers. Janelle's hands balled into fists, the sticky soda dripping down her braids and onto her jacket. Jada grabbed her arm, pulling her away. "Not here, Janelle. Not now." The restraint was becoming almost physically painful. Later, they found Jada's debate club notes torn and thrown in a trash can. Another time, someone had spray-painted a racial slur on Janelle's art project, ruining hours of work. Each incident chipped away at their resolve, leaving them feeling raw and exposed. They found an unlikely, cautious observer in MS. Clara Evans, their English literature teacher. MS. Evans, relatively new to Westbridge herself, was sharp-eyed and seemed less enamored with the school's ingrained hierarchy. She noticed the twins' withdrawal, the forced smiles that didn't reach their eyes, the way Ryan's group always seemed to be hovering nearby when small incidents occurred. She started paying closer attention, noticing Ryan's sneering interruptions when Jada spoke in class, the dismissive eye rolls when Janelle presented a project. She didn't intervene directly at first, lacking concrete proof and wary of the politics surrounding Ryan and his influential family, but she offered quiet encouragement to the twins, complimenting their insights in class, asking if everything was all right. Her empathy was a small comfort, but not yet a solution. The twins doubled down on their strategy of endurance and academic excellence, channeling their anger and frustration into their studies. They became fixtures in the library, aced exams, and impressed teachers with their dedication. But the social toll was undeniable. Invitations dried up. Potential friends seemed hesitant to associate with them, likely fearing becoming targets themselves. Lunch was often eaten quickly in a quiet corner of the cafeteria or outdoors, away from the main social hubs. The sense of isolation deepened. They felt like ghosts haunting the edges of Westbridge life. Their father noticed the change during weekend visits home. His usually vibrant daughters were quieter, more subdued. "Everything okay at that fancy school?" he asked gently one Sunday evening over dinner. Jada and Janelle exchanged glances. "It's challenging, Dad," Jada admitted carefully. "Academically demanding. But you're handling it?" he pressed, his gaze perceptive. "Yeah, Dad. We're handling it." Janelle forced a smile. They couldn't bring themselves to tell him the full extent of it, the daily grind of racist taunts and harassment. It felt like failure. He had sacrificed so much for this opportunity, working extra hours teaching private lessons to help with their expenses. Burdening him felt wrong. His parting words that evening stayed with them. "Remember your training. Balance isn't just physical. Find your center. Don't let anyone push you off balance emotionally." The upcoming winter formal dance became a point of contention. Janelle, surprisingly, wanted to go. "Why should we let them win, Jada? Why should we hide? We deserve to go just like everyone else." Jada was hesitant, anticipating trouble, but Janelle's rare display of defiance swayed her. They spent hours getting ready, borrowing dresses, doing each other's hair and makeup, trying to recapture some semblance of normal teenage excitement. Stepping into the decorated gymnasium felt like walking into the lion's den. The music was loud, the lights low, but they could feel eyes on them. Ryan and his crew were holding court near the punch bowl, watching their entrance. For an hour, things were surprisingly calm. They danced awkwardly with a couple of guys from the Science Olympiad team, chatted briefly with MS. Evans, who was chaperoning, and mostly kept to themselves near the edge of the dance floor. They allowed themselves a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could have one normal night. It was a fragile hope, easily shattered. The shattering blow came, predictably, from Ryan. As Jada and Janelle were heading towards the exit, ready to call a night, Ryan and two of his friends intercepted them near a less crowded corner by the refreshment tables. Leaving so soon, Ryan slurred slightly, a cup of red punch dangling from his fingers. His usual smirk was amplified, crueler under the flashing colored lights. "Didn't save a dance for me?" Jada tried to steer Janelle around him. "Excuse us, Ryan." He blocked their path, stepping closer. "Not so fast. We haven't welcomed the diversity hires properly yet." His friends chuckled menacingly. Before Jada could react, Ryan deliberately tipped his cup, dousing the front of Janelle's borrowed lilac dress with sticky red punch. Gasps rippled through the nearby students. The music seemed to fade. Janelle cried out, stumbling back, the dark stains spreading rapidly. Ryan threw his head back and laughed a loud, ugly sound. "Now that's a look," he sneered, gesturing at the ruined dress. "Matches your trashy background." He looked around at the silent, watching crowd. "What you all staring at? Party's over for these two. Go on, get out. Go back to the ghetto where you belong." Silence hung heavy in the air. Dozens of students stood frozen, phones subtly raised, recording, but no one moved to help. No one spoke out against the star quarterback. Humiliation washed over Jada, cold and sharp, followed by a surge of protective fury. She saw the tears welling in Janelle's eyes, the way her shoulders slumped in defeat. This wasn't just bullying anymore. It was a public degradation, a deliberate spectacle designed to break them. Janelle grabbed Jada's hand, her voice trembling but laced with steel. "Jada," she whispered, the sound barely audible above the renewed, thumping bass of the music. It's time. In that instant, something shifted irrevocably within Jada. Her father's voice echoed, not the one preaching patience, but the one explaining the core principle. Karate is for defense. Defense of self, defense of others, defense of dignity. They had endured. They had tried to be patient. They had tried to ignore. It hadn't worked. Ryan hadn't gotten bored. He'd escalated. The administration hadn't protected them. The other students remained passive bystanders. Their strategy of quiet survival had failed. This public assault, this deliberate attempt to shame and expel them, was the point of no return. They couldn't go back to pretending. They couldn't absorb anymore. Jada met Janelle's gaze and gave a slow, deliberate nod. Her eyes, when she turned them back to Ryan, were no longer filled with fear or humiliation, but with a cold, clear focus. She straightened her shoulders, gently wiped a stray drop of punch from Janelle's cheek. Then, her voice cutting through the stunned silence around them, clear and steady, she addressed Ryan directly. "Touch us again, Ryan," she said, her tone leaving no room for misinterpretation. "Touch either of us again, and you will regret it." She didn't shout, didn't threaten physically, but the intensity in her gaze, the sudden shift in her entire demeanor, made Ryan falter for a split second. The smirk wavered. He hadn't expected defiance, not like this. Jada held his gaze for another moment, then took Janelle's hand and walked steadily towards the exit, the crowd parting instinctively before them. They hadn't thrown a punch, but the battle line had been drawn. Their goal was no longer just survival. It was to stop this permanently. The walk home from the dance was mostly silent, the cold night air doing little to cool the burning anger and adrenaline. The carefully constructed walls of patience had crumbled. Back in their room, Janelle finally let the tears fall, scrubbing furiously at the sticky stain on her dress. "I hate him, Jada," she sobbed. "I hate this place." Jada sat beside her, putting an arm around her trembling shoulders. "I know," she said softly. "Me too." But the anger was now mixed with a new, sharp clarity. The midpoint confrontation hadn't solved anything immediately, but it had changed them. They were no longer just victims enduring. They were combatants who had issued a challenge. The next school day was thick with tension. Whispers followed them, but now tinged with curiosity and perhaps a grudging respect alongside the usual malice. Videos of the punch-spilling incident and Jada's quiet but firm warning had circulated quickly. Ryan glared at them across the cafeteria, his face thunderous. His public humiliation clearly hadn't sat well. He was used to controlling the narrative, to being feared and admired. Jada's unexpected stand had dented his ego, and they knew he wouldn't let it go. They braced for retaliation, acutely aware they were now marked targets in a way they hadn't been before. MS. Evans sought them out after English class. "Jada, Janelle, can I have a word?" she asked quietly, her expression concerned. In the relative privacy of the empty classroom, she looked at them seriously. "I saw what happened at the dance. Or rather, I saw the aftermath, and I've heard from others. Are you two okay?" Jada met her gaze directly. "No, MS. Evans. We're not." For the first time, they didn't deflect or downplay. They told her everything. The weeks of escalating harassment, the slurs, the locker incident, the damaged property, the administration's inaction. They spoke calmly, factually, the emotions simmering just beneath the surface. MS. Evans listened intently, her initial concern turning to visible anger. "This is unacceptable," she said finally, her fist clenching almost imperceptibly. "Ryan Mullery has been getting away with too much for too long. She paused, then leaned forward slightly. And I suspect it's not just him. I've heard whispers about Coach Hargrove. Victor Hargrove, the head football coach, was a towering figure at Westbridge, both literally and figuratively. He wielded significant influence, credited with multiple championships and revered by alumni boosters, including Ryan's father. Hargrove protects his players, MS. Evans continued, lowering her voice. Especially stars like Ryan. I've seen him bend rules, overlook behavior. I wouldn't be surprised if he's actively shutting down complaints against Ryan to protect his team's image and his own position. This revelation added a new, more complex layer to their problem. It wasn't just a cruel bully. It was a bully potentially shielded by a powerful figure within the school system. This explained the administration's reluctance to act decisively. A new strategy began to form, shifting from simple endurance or direct confrontation to something more calculated. Recalling their father's emphasis on strategy, the mind is the ultimate weapon. Jada realized they needed more than just their own word or even video of isolated incidents. They needed proof, undeniable evidence of the pattern of harassment, and, if possible, Hargrove's complicity. Janelle, practical and meticulous, pulled out a fresh notebook. "Let's write it all down," she said, determination hardening her features. Everything. Dates, times, locations, what was said, who was there. Every slur, every shove, every accident. They spent hours compiling the list, their shared memories painting a grim picture of systematic abuse. They started observing more keenly, noting which teachers seemed uncomfortable around Hargrove, which administrators defer to him. MS. Evans became a discreet ally, feeding them small pieces of information. Rumors of questionable athletic eligibility waivers for certain players, whispers about Hargrove pressuring teachers for grade changes. She also started documenting her own observations of Ryan's behavior and Hargrove's dismissive attitude towards concerns raised about players. The twins realized their fight wasn't just against Ryan anymore. It was against a system that enabled him. Their plan became twofold. Continue meticulously documenting Ryan's harassment, creating an undeniable record, and discreetly gather anything that might point to Coach Hargrove's improper influence or protection of a star player. It was riskier, moving from defense to active investigation, but the confrontation at the dance had burned their bridges. There was no going back to quiet endurance. They had to dismantle the source of the problem. Ryan, predictably, didn't take the challenge lying down. His anger, fueled by bruised ego and perhaps pressure from Hargrove to handle the situation, manifested in ways that were both petty and dangerous. He organized social boycotts, ensuring the twins were overtly excluded from group projects and study sessions. His friends amped up the intimidation. Shoulder checks in the hallway became harder. Whispers turned into direct taunts just out of teachers' earshot. One afternoon, Jada found her bike tire slashed in the rack outside school. There was no proof it was Ryan, but they knew. The pressure was constant, designed to isolate and break them. The twins, however, held firm, channeling their energy into their plan. Janelle's notebook filled rapidly with dated entries, descriptions of incidents, and names of potential witnesses, even those who were too afraid to speak up publicly. Jada focused on observation, noting Hargrove's interactions, his easy camaraderie with Ryan's father at games, his dismissive wave when a teacher tried to discuss a player's disruptive behavior. MS. Evans, meanwhile, navigated the treacherous school politics. She carefully reviewed school policies on bullying, harassment, and athletic code of conduct. She discovered anomalies in how student complaints seemed to disappear if they involved certain athletes. She found records of Hargrove intervening to lessen disciplinary actions against Ryan in the past for minor infractions, citing his importance to the team. It wasn't a smoking gun proving he orchestrated the bullying, but it painted a clear picture of enablement and preferential treatment that allowed Ryan's behavior to flourish unchecked. The most crucial piece of potential evidence came unexpectedly. Jada, staying late in the library to use a specific research database, overheard raised voices from a nearby conference room often used by coaches. The door was slightly ajar. She recognized Ryan's angry tones and Coach Hargrove's booming baritone. Moving closer, shielded by a tall bookshelf, she strained to listen, her heart pounding. "Gotta handle this, Ryan," Hargrove was saying, his voice tight with frustration. "That stunt at the dance, challenging you? It looks bad. Distractions we don't need before playoffs." And Evans is sniffing around. "It wasn't my fault," Ryan retorted petulantly. "They pushed me. Those charity cases think they own the place. I don't care whose fault it is." Hargrove snapped. "You're my quarterback, your dad's on the booster board. This needs to go away. Make them understand they don't belong here. Discourage them. Whatever it takes. Quietly. Understand." There was a muttered assent from Ryan. Jada slipped away silently. The coach's words. "Make them understand they don't belong. Discourage them. Whatever it takes." Burning in her ears. It wasn't explicit instruction to bully, perhaps, but it was clear direction to intimidate and drive them out, tacit approval given under the guise of protecting the team. It was the link they needed. Jada immediately shared what she'd heard with Janelle and MS. Evans. While Jada hadn't recorded it, aware of potential legal issues and the risk, her detailed recollection, combined with Janelle's logbook and MS. Evans' findings about Hargrove's past interventions and procedural irregularities formed a compelling narrative. They knew they couldn't just go to the principal. Hargrove's influence likely extended there. MS. Evans suggested a bolder move, presenting their findings directly to the school board at their next open session. It was a huge risk. Hargrove and Ryan's family would fight back, try to discredit them. They would be painting targets on their backs even more prominently. This felt like their dark night of the soul. Could they, two scholarship students and one relatively junior teacher, really take on the school's golden boy and a powerful coach backed by influential parents? Doubt gnawed at them. What if the board didn't believe them? What if this backfired and got MS? Evans fired and them expelled? Jada thought of her father's dojo, the principles of courage and integrity he drilled into them. Janelle looked at her notebook, pages filled with documented humiliation and fear. MS. Evans thought of the other students who might be suffering silently. They had to try. They spent the next week meticulously organizing their evidence. Janelle's chronological log, MS. Evans' report on policy violations and Hargrove's interventions, and Jada's prepared statement detailing the overheard conversation and the pattern of intimidation that followed the coach's directive. They braced themselves for the final confrontation, knowing the stakes couldn't be higher. The school board meeting room was packed, buzzing with an unusual energy. News of MS. Evans' intention to address the board regarding student conduct issues, coupled with the viral whispers from the winter formal, had drawn a crowd of parents, teachers, and curious students, including Ryan and his parents, seated front and center alongside Coach Hargrove. The air was thick with anticipation. MS. Evans spoke first, her voice clear and steady despite the intimidating audience. She laid out the school's anti-bullying policy, then detailed her observations of Ryan's behavior, the administration's inadequate response, and Coach Hargrove's pattern of interference in disciplinary matters concerning his players, presenting documented instances. A low murmur went through the room. Then Janelle stepped forward, her notebook held firmly. She presented the logbook, reading specific, dated entries detailing the relentless harassment, the slurs, the vandalism, the physical intimidation. Her voice trembled slightly at first, but gained strength as she spoke, recounting weeks of abuse with stark clarity. She named Ryan Mallory as the primary aggressor and his friends as accomplices. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, his face flushing red under the board member's scrutiny. His father started to object, but the board chair motioned for silence. Finally, Jada took the stand. She recounted the incident at the dance and her verbal warning. Then, locking eyes with Coach Hargrove, she detailed the conversation she had overheard outside the library conference room. Coach Hargrove told Ryan, and I quote, "Make them understand they don't belong here. Discourage them. Whatever it takes." Quietly, Hargrove leaped to his feet. "That's a lie. An outrageous fabrication," he boomed, his face purple with rage. "This is a desperate attempt by disgruntled students and a teacher with an agenda to smear a dedicated athlete and coach." Ryan's parents loudly echoed his outrage. But Jada stood her ground. "It's the truth," she stated simply, "and it explains why the harassment escalated after that point." MS. Evans quickly added, "Jada reported this conversation to me immediately. It aligns perfectly with the subsequent documented incidents and the pressure certain students felt. The combined weight of Janelle's meticulous log, MS. Evans' documented procedural concerns, and Jada's credible testimony detailing Hargrove's own words created a powerful indictment. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. The carefully constructed facade of Westbridge's golden boy and his protective coach was crumbling under the weight of meticulously presented truth. The fallout was swift and decisive. Faced with the detailed logbook, MS. Evans' evidence of procedural interference and Jada's damning testimony about Hargrove's instructions, the school board launched an immediate, independent investigation. The testimony of other students, previously silent, began to surface now that the dam had broken. The investigation confirmed the pattern of harassment and Hargrove's deliberate efforts to cover for Ryan and intimidate the twins. Ryan Mallory was suspended for the remainder of the school year, stripped of his captaincy, and mandated to attend sensitivity training and perform community service. His path to a top-tier scholarship evaporated overnight. Coach Victor Hargrove was placed on administrative leave, and after the investigation confirmed abuse of power, policy violations, and enabling behavior that fostered a hostile environment, he was fired. While criminal charges weren't immediately filed regarding the overheard conversation, the evidence of potential financial improprieties related to booster funds and preferential treatment led to a separate financial audit and potential legal consequences down the line. Westbridge Academy, deeply embarrassed, implemented sweeping reforms. They revamped their anti-bullying policies with clearer reporting channels and mandatory training for staff and students on recognizing and combating harassment and racial bias. They established a diversity and inclusion committee with student representatives, including Jada. The atmosphere at the school began a slow, necessary shift towards greater accountability. For Jada and Janelle, the victory was hard-won and bittersweet. They had faced down their tormentors and the system that protected them, but the experience left scars. Yet, it also forged an unshakable strength. They were no longer just the scholarship kids. They were the Rivers sisters, the ones who spoke truth to power. With MS. Evans as their faculty advisor, they founded Rivers Strength, an after-school club offering free self-defense basics, rooted in karate principles of discipline and control, and peer support for students experiencing bullying or discrimination. It quickly became a popular and respected group. One sunny afternoon, months later, Jada and Janelle stood watching club members practice basic blocks on the school lawn. Their father stood beside them, having driven up for a visit. "You did good, girls," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "Not just with your hands, but with your minds and your hearts. That's true strength." Jada leaned her head on Janelle's shoulder. "They try to make us feel like nothing," she murmured. Janelle smiled, a genuine, resilient smile. "Yeah," she agreed. But diamonds are formed under pressure. They had not only defended themselves, but had sparked a change, proving that courage, intelligence, and integrity could indeed be stronger than prejudice and brute force.